I didn't understand it at the time, but the house never hunted me. It waited. That's the mistake people make when they talk about places like that. They imagine something feral, something impatient, something that lunges. This wasn't like that. The house listened. It learned how long I stood in doorways, how often I hesitated before stepping forward, and how quickly hope returned after fear had done its work. It didn't feed on panic. Panic burns too fast. It fed on the moment right after, when you believe you might still leave. By the time I realized that, the house had already decided that I was staying. When I bought the house on Wakers Hill, I did it with the arrogance of a man who thinks the world has already shown him its worst. My father had died early. My mother disappeared into one of those sprawling desert cults, and I'd spent most of my adult life believing I had already crossed every threshold where terror might lurk. But I had crossed no thresholds. Not yet. Not the real ones. I found the house listed for shockingly cheap, sitting alone at the top of an overgrown hill like a blister on the land. The pictures were blurry, washed-out things, like the camera wanted nothing to do with the place. But I convinced myself that was just some real estate agent with a shaky hand. Cheap was cheap. I signed without even seeing it. That was how I ended up there on a stormy, collapsing afternoon in October, standing in front of a house that seemed to breathe. It wasn't a sound I heard at first. It was like a pressure in the air, the sense that the siding and beams pulsed slightly, drawn inward as if inhaling. The front steps sagged like a mouth that had forgotten how to close. Moss coated everything, and the windows were opaque with grime. None of that sent me back down the hill. It was only when I reached the door, an old swollen slab of wood that groaned like a dying thing, that I felt the thump. A pulse from inside, like something knocking once. Not greeting, announcing. I should have left. I know that now. Instead, I muttered something about old pipes and pushed the door open. That was when I felt the odor. Not smelled, but felt. Like a warm, rotten breath pressing against my face. And somewhere within the dark skeletal rooms beyond, something moved. I convinced myself that the shadows were playing tricks on me, that the yawning, crooked hallways were just unfamiliar. I even laughed when the light switch did nothing, as if that were the worst thing that could happen in a house like this. The electricity was out, the plumbing was questionable, and the roof leaked somewhere in the back. A rational person would have left and come back after a proper inspection. I stayed because I didn't want to admit that the place unnerved me. I stayed because I was stubborn. I stayed because, though I didn't realize it at the time, the spirit in the house wanted me to. I set up a cot in the living room, lit a lantern, and pretended to relax. The storm outside cracked against the walls like an angry sea. Rain hammered the roof. The lantern flame flickered in the drafts. Around midnight, I heard the footsteps. slow and wet and deliberate. They came from the hallway that led deeper into the house, the part I hadn't walked through yet, the part that seemed impossibly darker than the rest. Animal, I whispered to myself. How settling. The footsteps stopped directly outside the living room doorway. Then came the breathing, long and hungry, a wet inhale like something tasting the air. I reached for the lantern, but the moment my fingers brushed it, the flame went out. I sat in darkness thicker than anything I'd ever known. The breathing moved closer. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I couldn't even think. Something hovered inches from my face. I could feel the cold of it, and somehow the heat, too, as if its hunger radiated out through its nothingness. Then, with a sigh that froze my marrow, it whispered, "Not yet." The darkness lifted, just enough for the lantern to flicker back to life. The room was empty. But I couldn't shake the impression that the darkness hadn't left. It had only stepped aside. The next morning, the house didn't look like the same place. It looked older, hungrier. Where the wallpaper had simply peeled before, now it hung in thin strips, curling like tongues. The wood beneath seemed softer and darker, as if it had been soaked in shadow. Everywhere I looked, something felt wrong. Then I saw the scratches, long vertical gouges along the hallway wall. Some shallow, some carved deep enough to reveal splintered wood. They weren't the kind an animal made. These grooves were deliberate, repetitive, almost rhythmic. There were dozens, maybe hundreds, all at exactly the height of my chest. I stepped closer. The moment my fingers traced the nearest gouge, the house clicked. Not a physical sound, but a mental one, like a lock sliding into place. Behind me, the floorboards creaked. My heart stumbled and I spun around. Nothing. No one there. But the house was not empty. I could feel it, like pressure against my skin, like eyes everywhere at once. I walked slowly toward the living room to pack my things. When I reached the doorway, I found my cot was gone. Not moved, not tossed, simply gone, as if I had never brought it at all. The lantern remained, sitting in the exact center of the floor. Its flame was out, though I hadn't touched it. Beside it, carved into the wooden boards with the same deliberate strokes as the hallway scratches, were 2 words. Just hunger. The lettering shuddered faintly, like breath passing through it. I stepped back, then took another step. Behind me, the hallway darkened, as if something enormous had just stepped into it, blocking the light. I didn't look. If I looked, I would break. Instead, I said aloud, my voice shaking, "I'm leaving. I don't want anything from this place." The house answered. The walls groaned. The floorboards trembled. And from the deepest part of the structure came that same wet inhale. A breath, taken in anticipation. I bolted. I didn't even grab anything. I didn't care if it rained or if I had to walk down the hill barefoot. I just wanted away. But when I reached the front door, it was gone. Not jammed or locked. Gone. The frame was still there, the hinges, but the door itself had become a solid wall. The wallpaper overlapped seamlessly where the door should have been. "No," I murmured. "No, no, no." A single knock sounded from behind the wall. One, slow and measured. A greeting. The spirit was patient. It was waiting. I stumbled back, panic clawing up my throat, and I fell onto the floor. My hand struck something sharp beneath me. A gap in the boards where one panel sat slightly raised. Frantic to distract myself from the growing realization that I was trapped, I pried the loose board up. Beneath it lay a small, rotting, leather-bound diary. The cover was soft, worn as cloth, and sticky with age. I opened it with trembling fingers. The first page read, "If you are reading this, it means the hunger has chosen you." My mouth went dry. I read on. "I do not know its name. None of us ever learned it, but it lives between the walls, beneath the floors, behind the thresholds. It is old, older than the hill, older than the land, and it eats only one thing: fear touched by hope. The moment you believe you can escape, it feeds. Do not let it make you hope. Do not believe anything you see. It starves you of rest, of clarity, until your mind grows tender, and then it devours you. Not quickly, but over many nights. I leave this diary so that someone might understand before it is too late. It will toy with you. It will speak to you. It will learn you. If you are lucky, you will die before it finishes." The entry ended abruptly. Underneath, a smaller scrawl. "When it says not yet, run. You still have time." My blood turned to ice. It had said those words. I flipped the page. Blank. Another. Blank. The entire rest of the journal was empty except for the last page. On it, as though freshly carved with a blade, "I am still hungry." My breath caught. Those weren't the words of whoever wrote the journal. They were for me. I don't remember dropping the diary, but suddenly it was across the room and I was somewhere else, pressed against a corner, hugging my knees and trembling. I became aware of the sound first. A dragging, flesh over stone, wet, labored, and patient. It came from beneath the house, moving through the foundation, following me. I scrambled to my feet, dizzy with terror, and back down the hallway, even though every instinct screamed not to go deeper. But the dragging followed, echoing up through the floorboards. The ceiling lights, though dead, flickered anyway, buzzing like insects trapped in glass. And then the wall beside me bulged outward, just slightly, but enough to suggest a shape, a face pressing from the other side. But there were no features, just the hint of sockets, the impression of a mouth. The surface of the wallpaper stretched over it like skin over a skull. It opened that implied mouth, and the house exhaled hot, rancid breath. I screamed and ran. Every direction brought me deeper into a maze the house had not possessed before. Doorways led to hallways that led to rooms that twisted back into themselves. The architecture sagged and pulsed as if the house were becoming the spirit rather than merely containing it. At some point, I found myself in the bedroom at the end of the hall. I realized then that the door had closed behind me and locked. I hadn't touched it. The room felt smaller every second. In the corner sat an old wardrobe, its doors cracked open as ribs pried apart. Something moved inside it. A hand, or what used to be a hand. The fingers were too long, jointed too many times, bending forward and backward. They scraped along the inner surface of the wardrobe door as the spirit, its body unseen, pulled itself forward. Every instinct in me froze. Every bone screamed at me to be still. The fingers stopped moving. Then they curled, beckoning. The wardrobe door swung wider, though the thing inside did not touch it. And deep within that impossible darkness, two pale shapes glimmered. Eyes. Empty, colorless, and starving. The hungry spirit spoke without sound, the voice a sensation crawling beneath my skin. I can taste your hope. And the wardrobe surged forward, stretching impossibly, as the room itself folded toward me. I hurled myself out the window. The glass should have shattered, but it didn't. Instead, it bent like flexible plastic, warping beneath my weight and throwing me back. The wardrobe shuddered open like a yawning mouth, and then the house went silent, which was somehow worse, because silence meant the spirit was choosing how it wanted to devour me. I don't know how long I lay on the floor, half-conscious. Time in that house didn't function the way it should. Every second stretched thin, every breath felt stolen. When I finally dragged myself upright, the room had changed. The wardrobe was gone. In its place was a doorway, one I knew had never been part of the layout. A narrow frame of splintered wood stood crookedly, leading into total darkness. But I heard something from within. A voice, a man's voice, whispering urgently, "Don't look, don't speak, come quickly." It sounded human. For a moment, God forgive me, I felt hope. The spirit could mimic voices, I knew that, but this one sounded different, less hungry, more desperate. Please, the voice whispered. It will hear us. Against every rational instinct, I moved toward the doorway because I needed to believe someone else was trapped here with me. I stepped into the dark. The air changed immediately, becoming cold and thick, almost gelatinous. I reached out and felt walls on either side, narrow and suffocating, like I was walking into the house's throat. The voice whispered again, closer. Here. A dim glow appeared, revealing a cramped crawl-space room. In the corner crouched a man in tattered clothes, his face gaunt, eyes sunk into purple hollows. He looked like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. You're real, I breathed. He shook his head. No one who comes here stays real for long. His hands trembled as he beckoned me closer. It feeds, he whispered, glancing around. But it cannot eat what hides. It hates the hidden places. That's why I've lived. How long? I asked. A season, he muttered. Or maybe a century. Time doesn't behave here. He gestured for me to sit. I hesitated. He noticed and smiled weakly. You think I'm a part of it? No. I've tricked it. Kept myself beneath its notice. You can too. Just don't hope. Don't run. Don't think about leaving. Hunger smells thoughts. My blood ran cold. He leaned closer. It listens. My skin prickled, but then I saw it. Behind him. In the wall, a shape. A face. Not his. Its. The man must have seen my expression change. His smile faltered. You see it, don't you? He whispered. I nodded. It found you quicker than me, he said quietly. It likes you. He closed his eyes. Run. The wall behind him split open like rotting skin, and a mass of limbs, too many, bending wrong, jointed like broken branches, exploded forward and wrapped around him. His scream was brief. The spirit dragged him into the walls with sickening speed, the sound of cracking bone echoing like wet branches snapping. I ran. The crawl space shrank around me, breathing, throbbing, and squeezing me forward like a swallowed meal. My only thought was to move, but behind me, in a voice that was not the man's, not yet. I don't remember escaping the crawl space. I only remember collapsing in the kitchen, the floorboards swollen with moisture and old stains. The house felt giddy. It thrummed faintly like a throat purring after a meal. I crawled to the sink, desperate for water. The faucet coughed out something brown and viscous. The smell alone made me retch. My body ached with exhaustion. My mind cracked at the edges. Sleep tugged at me like a hook beneath my ribs. But I remembered the diary's warning. Rest is how it softens you. I slapped myself hard to stay awake. And that was when the spirit spoke again, this time in a dozen overlapping voices, male and female, young and old. Sleep and be tender. The kitchen lights flared violently and then burst, raining glass down on me. When I opened my eyes again, I was on the floor. Had I slept? Seconds? Hours? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. The hunger had grown stronger, and so had its interest in me. At some point, don't ask me how long, I dragged myself back toward the front of the house, toward the place where the exit had once been, and to my shock, the door was there again, standing open, welcoming. The wind outside rolled in, cold and sharp and real. I began to weep. Freedom, escape, life. I could run and I could live. I could leave. Every step toward the door felt like shedding chains. The sunlight grew brighter, the outside air cooler. The smell of wet leaves filled my nose. I could taste freedom like water on my tongue. One more step, just one more. I lifted my foot and stepped through the threshold. And the world vanished. I didn't fall. The door simply opened onto nothingness. A void of biting cold. A mouth. And it closed around me. Darkness swallowed me whole, and the spirit whispered, "Hope tastes best." The house reassembled itself around me. The door was gone. The hallway reformed. My body lay on the floor. I had never left. I had only fed it. After that, the house no longer bothered pretending. The rooms melted into each other, bending and reforming like flesh knitting over bone. Doors appeared and disappeared. Windows opened onto screaming faces or forests of black teeth. It stalked me, openly. I could hear it giggling sometimes, a wet, choking sound. The walls quivered when I touched them. The floor swelled beneath my weight. And the spirit, it watched. Sometimes from the ceiling, its long arm dangling like a spider's leg. Sometimes from the floor, its fingers poking through cracks. Sometimes directly behind me, close enough for me to feel the cold drip of its breath down my neck. "You are right," it murmured more than once. I did not know how much longer I could last. My mind frayed, my body trembled, and still the spirit waited, because it wanted me afraid, but still clinging to hope. That made the fear sweeter. At some point, I don't remember when, I found the diary again, but it wasn't where I'd left it. It was in my hand, open to a page that had not existed before. On it, in handwriting that looked eerily like mine, were the words, "To survive, give it to someone else." My blood froze. A sacrifice? A replacement? If I lured someone else here, the spirit would take them instead. I dropped the diary as if it were fire. "No," I breathed. "I won't do that. I won't." The house shuddered violently. The walls bulged. The floor cracked. Plaster rained down like dandruff from a giant corpse. The spirit did not like my answer. It appeared fully before me. I cannot describe it. Not truly. It was not a shape so much as an absence wearing the idea of limbs. Its face was a smear of hunger, empty sockets and an ever-widening mouth filled with teeth folding over each other like pale knives. Its voice was the sound of a grave settling. "Not yet." It touched my face, and I screamed as memories, my memories, tore free of me like meat peeled from bone. The spirit fed on them, not devouring, sampling, tasting. "One more night," it said into my skull. "Then you are ready." I do not remember most of that final night. Only flashes, darkness, crawling, screaming that might have been mine. The spirit above me whispering. The house shaking, laughing, drinking in my terror. Until suddenly, silence. Something changed. The house paused, and I realized the spirit was no longer watching me. It was waiting. But for what? I looked down. The diary lay open beside me. The final page was blank. Then words bled across it, letter by letter, as if carved from the other side. The threshold opens, and the front door, the real front door, exploded open. Sunlight poured in, fresh air, freedom, hope. The spirit loomed behind me, coiling like a shadow, ready to pounce. It whispered, trembling with anticipation, "Run." Because it wanted me to. Because the moment I believed I could escape, the moment hope bloomed bright and desperate, my fear would become exquisite. I staggered toward the exit, my tears blinding me. Sunlight warmed my face. I could hear birds, wind, life. I could make it. I could. I stopped. Because I saw something. My reflection in the open doorway. Not the world outside. Only me, standing in a door-shaped mirror. The spirit's voice slid into my ear. "Step through. Feed me." My hope snapped, and with it, the illusion. The doorway collapsed inward like rotten fruit, revealing nothing. No world, no escape, only teeth, rows upon rows of teeth. And then the spirit lunged. I don't remember dying, because I didn't. Not fully. Not the way we think about death. I woke in darkness, cramped, pressed between walls that throbbed like veins around me. I cannot move. I do not breathe. I see through the house. I watch the doors. I listen for footsteps outside. I feel the hunger inside me, stretching, sharpening. I understand now. The spirit was never one thing. There were many. It was every soul that had ever fed it. And now, I am one of them. Someone stands at the foot of Wakers Hill, a new stranger, a hopeful fool. They take their first step toward the house, and somewhere deep inside these walls, in whatever remains of my mind, something ancient rises like a tide. I feel my fingers reach out through the plaster, carving new messages, new warnings, new lies, scratches, dozens of them, all at chest height, all deliberate, all saying the same thing, just hunger. And as the stranger reaches the door, I whisper from every dark place at once, "Not yet."